If you base your opinion of CS2 on what's being said in Counter-Strike subreddits or popular YouTube videos, you'd probably think that CS2 is kind of a shit game, and I wouldn't blame you for thinking that. The general consensus is that the anti-cheat is garbage, the netcode is questionable, a ton of features from CSGO are missing, the premier ranking system sometimes makes no sense, and to top it all off, the game literally lets kids gamble. But, dear viewer, in this video I'll try to explain why I think most of these complaints are overblown, and more importantly I'll show you why I believe Counter-Strike is the best competitive game in the world. With that said, the first subject is Counter-Strike always had a cheating problem, even going as far back as CS 1.6, but it seems like since the release of CS2 the cheating issue became even worse. In my personal experience, I would say only about 5% of my matches were ruined by cheaters, and I do not find it to be a major issue in my current skill level, but the stats do not lie, the cheating problem is very real and I will not argue with that. However, what I will argue with is the idea that kernel level anti-cheats are better than VAC. Now, while it's true that games that use kernel level anti-cheat like Valorant for example are better at stopping cheaters, I think it's important to understand what is the true cause of this increase in effectiveness. There are 4 levels of access to your computers called the rings, and the closer you get to a level 0 clearance, the more freedom you get to do whatever you want on someone's PC. Most games and applications operate on a tier 3 security clearance, which means that their permissions are restricted, and it's perfect that way because most apps do not need more than that. Kernel anti-cheat, on the other hand, has, like the name suggests, kernel level access to your computer, aka ring 0 clearance, aka full access. Here's a list of fun things someone with a level 0 access can do to your computer. It could monitor your keyboard inputs and see every password you type in. It could take a screenshot or record your screen at any time. It could turn on your webcam. It could install a rootkit and make itself invisible not only to you but also to your antivirus. It could potentially disable your antivirus. It could create a backdoor and remotely access your computer while you're away. And scariest of all, it could do all of this while you never even know about it. Now maybe you trust all your favorite studios with that kind of access and maybe you think they never abuse it, but CrowdStrike, a cybersecurity company, proved last year that you don't even need ill intent to cause harm, you just need to write bad code. Normally, when a program gets a faulty update, the repercussions are limited to the program itself, but when this said program has kernel level access, a single bad update can completely break your computer, and matter of fact that's exactly what happened. 8.5 million computers got the blue screen of death, and suddenly thousands of establishments from airports to hospitals to even the fucking government lost the ability to function correctly. Now, tell me, do you want a video game to have that much power? Personally, I don't, and thankfully Valve completely refuses to use kernel level anti-cheat, which is why VAC is less powerful than something like Vanguard for example. VAC needs to be better, I will not argue with that, but I'll take a less effective anti-cheat over something that could potentially break my PC or steal my info, and I will die on that hill. When CS2 was released, a lot of people, including myself, complained that the gameplay felt a bit off and that a lot of content was missing from CSGO. The movement and the shooting felt very inconsistent, spraying especially felt like a roll of the dice, and the new subtick netcode was a fucking joke. It wasn't rare for someone to peek and kill you before you had the chance to react, and that's because there was a big gap between what was happening on your screen versus what was happening on the server. To add fuel to the fire, the game launched without any workshop support or community servers, and like 3/4 of the map from CSGO were missing. The problem is that it's been almost 2 years since the game released, and most of these issues have either been fixed or greatly improved, but I see a lot of people act like this is not the case. The gunplay is way more smooth, the netcode is miles better, Peeker's advantage is not really a thing anymore, and you now get to choose what elements you want your computer to predict, and inversely what elements you prefer to wait for the server to confirm. Also, the community servers, the replay system, and the workshop have been added back, and just in the past month alone we got 5 new maps, a new case, 3 new collections, a new weekly challenge system, and cash is most likely coming soon. Now, it would be a bit hypocritical of me to not acknowledge that this has been an exceptional month for CS2 standards. It's not like we get updates like these every month or something, but still it feels like Valve are finally putting out more content and they are definitely listening to the community's feedback. This week alone, a random dude on Reddit made a super detailed post about why recall jitter happens and how Valve could potentially fix it, and they listened to him and patched it within a couple days. Anyways, the game still lacks a couple maps and the movement still feels a little off, but it's a far cry from the state it used to be in, and I genuinely think the future of CS2 is super bright. It's in these types of situations where I'm grateful I don't have much of an audience, because I would probably get flamed for what I'm about to say. I have almost no issues whatsoever with the concept of cases. Matter of fact, I think that overall it's a good thing for the consumer. In my opinion, there's 4 types of players, and I believe that only one of them is truly problematic. There's the weekly drop seller, which is the type of player who, as the name suggests, always sells this free weekly drop and almost never opens any cases. Then there's the weekly drop gambler, which will sometimes open the drop they've been given instead of selling it. Also, there's the occasional gambler, which will not only open their weekly drop but will also go on the market and buy a couple cases every month. And finally, there's the degen, aka the guy who spends half his fucking paycheck every week on cases, aka the average only pixel fan. If you're a degenerate gambler, you should probably get some help, but also thank you, because you guys are literally keeping the market alive. What I mean by this is that since the Steam market is a free market, it means that the price of everything is determined by supply and demand and nothing else. This means that every week a lot of cases are added to the market because people get their weekly drop, then the gamblers open these cases and they flood the market with skins, and this keeps the price of everything in check. If people stop opening cases, the demand for skins will stay the same but the supply will become scarcer, and thus the price of everything will rise. What all this mumbo jumbo means is that as long as you do not spend a ridiculous amount of money on cases, you are actually getting a way better consumer experience than in other games. Why? Well, first of all, the price of everything is decided by the community. The people decide how much they are willing to pay for a skin, and the market reacts accordingly. This means that you will always get what you pay for because the price of everything is dictated by what the majority thinks. If we take pretty much any other game, it doesn't work like that. Usually the price of the skin is dictated by some random suits that often charge way too much money, and if you buy a skin for, let's say, $30, you don't actually receive a skin that's worth $30, you just lose $30. It's pretend money, the price of the skin isn't based on anything, and worst of all, you cannot resell it, so it's always a 100% loss every time. In Counter-Strike, you can buy a cool skin for like $5, which is impossible to do in other games, and if for whatever reason you are not satisfied, you can simply sell it back. I believe this is objectively better for the consumer, and the crazy part is that if you're the first type of player I talked about, aka you're the type of dude who always sells his weekly drop, you are technically making a profit by simply playing the game. So anyways, my point is that yes, some people will lose a lot of money on Counter-Strike, and yes, this sucks and I speak from experience, but fuck man, if the upside is having a completely free market and an economy so good you can actually make a profit by just playing the game, I think it might actually be worth it, to be honest. If you remember correctly, I said at the start of the video that I believe CS2 is the best competitive game out there, but the problem is that so far I only tackled some of the criticism, but I never actually said why I think the game is great. So ladies and gentlemen, get ready because I'm about to glaze the fuck out of the game. First things first, the game is perfectly balanced, and I don't mean it hyperbolically, it's actually fucking flawless. The weapons are well balanced, mostly because contrary to other games like Valorant for example, each sides actually get different guns. For example, the Glock in Counter-Strike has a lot of ammo, which allows the terrorists to spam in clear sights quickly, while the USP deals way more damage at range but requires better precision because of the lower clip size. This makes sense because the Ts need to be able to enter a site without having to reload every second, and the CTs need to be rewarded for hitting their shots because if they miss and the Ts close the distance, they will get overwhelmed super quickly. Same goes for the ARs. The terrorist needs a lot more brute force power to pierce the enemy defenses, so they get the AK-47, a one-shot headshot beast that can melt anyone at any range as long as you're able to control the insane recoil, and the CTs get the M4A1S and the M4A4, two low recoil guns that deal less damage than the AK but is a lot easier to control. Now you might be thinking, how is it fair that the Ts get an AR that can one-shot and the CTs don't? And this is where things get kind of genius. You see, if both sides had the same amount of raw firepower, the Ts would always be at a disadvantage because they would have the burden to plant the bomb and clear the sites, while the CTs can just chill and hold angles. The AK partially eliminates that gap because it will, in theory, always kill faster than the M4 as long as you aim for the head. But don't get it twisted, if you miss a couple shots you are fucked because the M4 will completely maul you. Also, the utilities are super balanced too and they each serve a purpose. For example, the smoke is really good because it makes it impossible for the enemies to see you, but be careful, if someone shoots the smoke or throws a grenade at it, they can easily break it. The Molotov will force the enemies to change position or risk burning to death, but it can be countered with a simple smoke. The grenade has no real counter, but it's generally pretty weak, so you need to throw a couple of them to be effective. And the flash grenade, well, it's a flash grenade. It's really good, but just don't look at it and it's useless. Now you might be thinking, that's cool and all, but isn't the AWP extremely OP? And the answer is yes, but Counter-Strike is one of the few games where a gun can be both OP and balanced at the same time, thanks to the economy system. Since everything has a price, every weapon carries a risk, so if you buy a MAC-10 and you get domed 20 seconds in, it's bad but it's not catastrophic, you and your team can easily bounce back, but on the other hand, if you decide to full buy with an AWP and do the same thing, then you fumbled like 6.5 to 7,000 bucks, which is a lot of money. The second reason why I think Counter-Strike is so awesome is the gameplay. Mechanically, it's leagues ahead of any other FPS on the market, and honestly I don't think it's even remotely close. The movement is unmatched, the recoil mechanics are extremely rewarding to master, learning the smokes for each map is super interesting, and nothing can beat the feeling of clutching around in this game. This shit is pure heroin. I have never taken any FPS game seriously before, and I always thought that training for a video game is kind of cringe, but CS is so good that it single-handedly changed my perspective. I would say like a fifth of my playtime is just me playing on training maps and shooting at walls to learn the recoil pattern, which is something I never thought I'd do. I don't know what kind of black magic Valve used when making CS, but I promise you, for me, training in Counter-Strike is almost as fun as playing the actual game, and I think that speaks volumes to how great the game is when it comes to its core mechanics. Another thing that makes Counter-Strike such a special game is the fact that if you ever get sick of being a tryhard, you have literally thousands of options at your disposal. There are thousands of workshop maps you can play alone or with friends, and if you have no friends, you can play on community servers. You can hop on a surfing server if you want, you can play zombie escape, you can play custom deathmatch, and really the list goes on and on. There are hundreds of active servers, and if for whatever reason you hate custom matches, you can still play deathmatch and gun game on official servers. Anyways, my point is that most competitive games do not offer great alternatives if you're sick of playing rank, like usually it's ranked or nothing, but in Counter-Strike it doesn't work like that. Matter of fact, some people primarily play on community servers. The last thing that, for me, makes CS2 the superior esport is the decades of history surrounding the game. No esports outside of maybe League of Legends has an history that is even half as rich as CS, and it's hard to explain, but you can actually feel it when you play the game. Almost everyone who plays CS is at least a little bit aware of what's happening in the pro scene, and that's because 1, unlike other games, CS actually celebrates its pro scene, and 2, the scene is filled to the brim with recognizable legends. The average CS player has heard about Simple, Zywoo, Dunk, etc., and people are so passionate about the pro scene that you'll often see guns with team stickers on them or even player signatures. There is a deep respect and admiration for the pros, and proof of this is that the other day I wanted to learn how to surf and I randomly had the chance of meeting Smooya, and everybody in the lobby instantly knew who he was, even though he's not like a superstar or something. He just chilled with us for like 20 minutes and talked about his time with Fnatic and his experience as a pro player, and I'm not kidding, everyone stopped talking and they just listened to him. Before he joined, the server was a chaotic mess of people talking over each other in Turkish, Russian, and German, and as soon as he joined, everyone suddenly became super polite and spoke fluent English. I feel like it's the 10th time I said that, but once again, if we take any other FPS esport, it doesn't work like that. In Valorant, Overwatch or Siege, if you are not top 20, nobody will give a fuck about you, and it makes sense because the average guy that plays these games do not care about the pro scene. The point I'm trying to get at is that when you play Counter-Strike, you also swim in Counter-Strike culture and history, and it makes the game feel like it matters, and honestly it's kind of beautiful. Every map is filled with memorable highlights, every gun has a legend that mastered it, and every match you feel like you contribute to that history, even if your contribution is quite small. All of this to say that I fucking adore the Counter-Strike competitive scene and I just love the game as a whole. And I know most people who watch me don't really care about CS, but if I made even one of you guys care, then I'm happy because I genuinely think it's a wonderful game. Anyways, if you made it this far, thank you for sitting through my TED Talk. I've been quite obsessed with CS lately and I had to find a way to talk about it in a video. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed, thank you for your time and thanks for watching.